Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we go back through all of human history and take examples of moments of complete stupidity and give you lessons from those moments so that you can learn from their mistakes and never repeat them again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. We actually quite like making mistakes, especially when they provide fodder and lessons for other people. Joining me as ever is my amazing, wonderful co-host and friend, Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm doing really, really good, actually.
I'm glad. We had a nice, quick discussion before we came on air. That was good to catch up with you.
Yeah. I didn't even dive into the part that my son had his first college baseball pitching start yesterday.
Yeah, that's so cool, man.
And it happened to be on one of the broadcasts that had like commentary and everything. And oh man, dude, like I was all gushing. Like I was so like messed up that I blew off all the rest of my plans for the rest of the day.
And that's totally fine. Like,
oh yeah,
in that moment of joy and pride, just like, oh god, nothing else matters really, does it? After that,
no, it was awesome. I had a great day. Cool. I'm having a great weekend.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, me too, for the most part. I've been a little ill. I've been ill for a while, but yeah, we managed to go to a place called Moseley Old Hall today, which is a National Trust location not too far from where I live. It's where it's like 600 something years old. It's famous because when the king was fleeing execution, he stayed briefly in this place. Because Moseley Old Hall has something called a priest hole, and it's not what you're thinking. English stately homes at one point in time during the Reformation, when it was made illegal to be a Catholic priest and to preach Catholicism in the UK, priests were hidden by wealthy families inside their houses, and they would build these secret compartments within the walls of their houses and hide the priests in there whenever like the authorities would come around looking for them. And they were called priest holes. And the one in Moseley Old Hall is kind of a palatial priest hole, but only because it's not like a coffin that they have to sit in it. You can actually lie down in it. You can take like a candle, you can take a book, you can take some food, you can move around. But it's like it's really well hidden. It's so cool. So
I'm just sorry
the priest.
I know hole. It's not but the palatial priest hole.
The palatial, the gaping priest hole.
I'm glad that you clarified it though, because when you said it had as a priest hole, I thought I thought we
were going down a very dark.
You hide your drugs when you're getting on the plane, right?
Yeah, that's the that's the donkey pouch. Yeah, the mule pouch. Really cool. I was able to do that, and I'm having a good weekend too. I want to shout out to Kimberly. Hey fellas, you guys suck. Great way to start a conversation. You could have posted yesterday as a birthday gift for me. Happy birthday, Kimberly. Many happy returns. Thank you so much for all your love and support. You've always been really, really great with us. And Kimberly is also a Patreon, along with Dilly Bob and Andrew Zavara and Jesse Christ. Want to give a huge shout out to our patrons who support us financially. And if you would like to support us financially as well, please go on over to patreon.com/History's Greatest Idiots, where you will get behind the scenes stuff like our scripts. You'll also get regular monthly kind of Patreon exclusive recordings, which we'll be doing soon for this month, hopefully.
Mhm.
And also, you get a free gift, and if you stay with us long enough, you get like some really cool free gifts, like very personalized free gifts that are specific to our crew. So hop on down to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots, and we post stuff on there that you will not see anywhere else because we fucking hate social media these days. So we're basically done with it. Demonstrated by the fact that you can follow us on Instagram. We do post on there regularly. We have very few issues with Instagram these days at History's Greatest Idiots. You can find some of our cool little reels on there and stuff. But also, we are no longer on Twitter, and I couldn't be happier about that. Fuck Twitter.
Indeed.
Yeah. X, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who cares?
But not the movie X. The movie X was good.
The movie X was fine. The movie Triple X was even better. And the bottles that have Triple X on them are even more tasty. But the social media platform X can go fuck itself right in the X.
That's like it do for advertisers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who's on that platform? Anyway, so that's our social media commitments. And also, you can find us on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/history's greatest idiots, you can find a bunch of amazing videos on there, including short reels and all long form versions of this podcast as well in video form. So if you want to stare at us while you fall asleep, which I'm hoping the audience do, because apparently that's where the YouTube money is now. Long form videos that people put on when they fall asleep. Go there. I promise to do like a few minutes of ASMR. So if
I'll sound like rain.
Yeah, I'll make it. I'll do whale noises. I don't know what that was. So yeah, go there, support us, and we'll get some of that sweet Google ad revenue.
Our algorithms are just confused now. They don't know what we are.
No one knows where to go now. I've got to do these touch points because apparently it works, but man, no one knows where to go. Anyway, so we've talked about all of our stuff. We've got a really interesting podcast. I think we've mentioned this before about this season being more of a redemptive thing. We're covering more lighter stories and more redemption arcs, I think, this season. And Derek, you've got a really cool, well-known redemption arc to cover this week, right?
Yeah, and honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if I'm bringing historical figures at anymore. Like it's in the sense that you're not reading about the people I'm covering in your history books. I don't think. No. I'm just kind of telling people about pop culture figures that did dumb shit.
Yeah, which is fine because there's more coverage of them than there is of like fucking Alexander the Great's like one night stand in like Alexandretta or whatever. You know, we just don't have the footage and information of that, do we?
Right. And I feel like the dumb things that they did, kind of a lot of them resonate a little bit closer to home for me from lessons that I've learned myself. So I feel like I can latch onto them and talk about them and what we do here. So
absolutely.
Like you said, redemption arc. And I think this guy has an okay one. Like you said, I think it's okay. We talked
pretty good.
A little bit about this one. Normally I surprise you. This time I told you. I'm going to tell you about another American leading man with a career that spans comedy, drama, action drama.
Yeah.
He's got 2 Academy Award nominations, 3 Golden Globe Awards, 9 Primetime Emmys, and some SAG Awards.
Wow. Prolific.
Now, he's got all of that despite, in my opinion, him always playing a variation of the same damn character in everything he's ever in.
Yeah.
He's born on the 5th of June, 1971 in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. So inadvertently, on St. Patrick's Day here, I'm covering an Irish gentleman of Irish descent.
Sure, yeah.
From Massachusetts, just coincidentally. It seems like a very American St. Patrick's Day thing to do. So there you go.
Perfect timing.
He's the youngest of 9 children. You might know his brothers Robert and Donnie. They're also kind of famous in entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I'm talking about Marky Mark Wahlberg.
And the Funky Bunch. Yes.
He comes from a working class, super Caucasian family. His mother is Irish, English, French, Canadian. His father is Swedish and Irish. And I'm not going to lie, I'm surprised he got the tan that he's able to get with that kind of lineage.
That's the Hollywood tan. That's like the show up in a booth for 30 minutes once a month tan, I reckon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, look at this. I don't even have that much kind of in me, and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
So, no, I get you. Like, I am as pale as a fucking ghost most of the time, and you know that's through design. I don't go out much, but also I'm a Celt, so you know I don't tan. I burn.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Anyway, his parents split up in 1982, so he's around 10 or 11 years old, and he ends up dividing his time between his mom and his dad's place. And I think maybe some of that led to some of his early violent issues, and not making excuses. I'm just kind of looking at it a little bit because it wasn't a lot of time after the split that some of it started. Because in June of 1986, right around the time he's 15 years old, Mark and 3 of his friends chased 3 black children while yelling
Racial
a phrase
slurs.
I'm not going to repeat. It started with kill the and ended with a super wrong fucking word.
Man.
So they were also throwing rocks and
Jesus.
doing stuff like that.
And I just before, because some people may listen to this and think, well, it's the 1980s, it's Boston, it was a different time. It wasn't that different. Like, that shit was not acceptable in the 1980s, even in shitty parts of Boston. You know?
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up. And then the next day, Mark and his friends followed another group of mostly black 4th graders. Now he's 15 years old. Following these 4th graders on a field trip to the beach. One of them, who was in the group of the 3 kids from the day before. And while they're at the beach, they summoned over, quote, other white males to join and yelled racial epithets, threw rocks, and engaged in other generally shitty behavior that was harassing and horrible.
What the fuck? Like, this isn't the South in the 19th century. What the fuck is he doing? That's crazy behavior.
A very angry youth at this time. A few months later, in August of 86, a civil action was filed against him and his friends for violating the civil rights against those victims in that incident.
Yeah.
And Mark and his funky bunch, not the band, it's a different ones. These racist friends here, not those ones.
Funky as in they smell like fucking horrible shit because they're racially abusing people.
They got issued a civil rights injunction as a result of that action, which was really just kind of a warning that they'd be tossed in jail if they did another hate crime.
Well, yeah. And I think for most people, for like 80-90% of people, especially around that age, if your parents get involved in that, if they hear about this sort of action, I think that's kind of the end of it for most people. Like, the warning is enough for most people, but sometimes you are so off the rails that actually you don't take the warning seriously and you continue on that behavior.
Right. Well, it seems like it's kind of light, but I mean, he's 15. There's a chance for intervention. You could have changed course early. You could have gotten involved, but they were kind of like, hey, now you shouldn't do that. Don't do it again, or you're going to get in real trouble. Damn it. And a few months later, he's 16, almost 17 years old. In April of 1988, he goes off and assaults a middle-aged Vietnamese American man on the street, calling him Vietnam fucking shit.
Okay.
Quote. And then he whacked him in the head with a stick and knocked him unconscious.
Oh, Jesus.
And apparently he was just on one that day because a little while later he walked up and punched another man right in the eye, a man by the name of Johnny Trin, who initially he believed the punch to the eye caused him to lose the vision in his eye.
Right.
And following that, he was arrested and taken back to his first victim, where he helped the police out by saying, I'll tell you now, that's the motherfucker whose head I split open. You should probably bleep that. I don't know if I could say that on YouTube. Oh, well, I guess we'll find out.
We've gotten away with it so far.
In April 1988, Mark now still... Oh, wait. I just said that.
Yes.
So initially, he's arrested for attempted murder. And obviously, you're thinking hate crime, right?
Well, yeah. Yes.
And that injunction you're thinking about, too, probably, because that's just a little bit ago. You'd think that's still got to be in effect, maybe?
Surely.
And I'm thinking he was thinking of that, too, because his story was like, no, it wasn't racially motivated. I was on PCP.
Maybe both things are true, Mark.
Could be
Yeah.
because the investigators in their notes, quote, said that he made numerous unsolicited racial statements about. I'm not going to say the words.
Yeah.
But they
You
were related to what people called Vietnamese people in the Platoon movies.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Anyway, Mark ended up being charged with 2 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, 1 count of marijuana possession, poor marijuana, and criminal contempt for violating the civil rights injunction that he received in '86.
Right.
He ended up pleading guilty to the felony assault and was sentenced to 3 months in jail, but served only 45 days.
What?
Yeah. Super.
Holy shit. Well, I guess that makes sense because 3 months, 45 days, it's a month and a bit. So that's about right.
It seems
months,
pretty
though.
light for knocking somebody over the head with a stick. Like, I get the punched in the eye one.
Yeah. In this country, that would have been like a couple of years, I think, even at that time, for like that kind of GBH, essentially.
I mean, he was
assault
only
with a deadly
16,
weapon.
and the dude was in middle age, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Maybe.
It was the 80s. So
yeah, lighter on crime, I guess, before the kind of the outbreak of harsher punishments for like drug offenses and stuff, and when people were being incarcerated at higher rates. But yeah, man, that's a very light sentence. Very light.
Well, and like I said, for a long time, he believed that that he had blinded that second victim. Right. Although that Johnny Trin came out and said that he lost his eyesight during the Vietnam War while he was serving with the South Vietnamese Army fighting along American forces. So it ended up being not so bad, but it's still shitty to punch somebody in their blind eye. So that does make it even worse, actually. He sucker punched the dude in his blind eye, a war vet. What a dick.
Oh man, that is huge dick points right there. That's huge idiot points to start off with. Man,
that's a jerk kid right there. Anyway, now let's talk about another thing that's going on in his life. Around the same time, there was good things happening. His older brother Donnie's got his music thing going on. You might not have known this. I didn't know this, but at 13, Mark was actually in this really cool band with his brother Donnie, one of the group's original members. But he ended up quitting after a few months. It's a little band. You might have heard of them. They were kind of big at the time. New Kids on the Block.
That's right. Holy shit.
Instead of the Funky Bunch, he could have been in them.
Yeah. I remember they kind of sparked an era of boy band, like just huge name boy bands that just one after another came along. And they were like the first ones. And it was really clever because they blended, like, I hate to say it because it's such an American thing, but like they brought elements of hip hop culture to a white audience to a certain extent. Hip hop was already big business at this point in time, but it was the more accessible, washed down, funky white boy version of it. And they just sort of laid the groundwork for pretty much the next 15 years worth of hugely successful boy bands across the world.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. They kicked it off for sure.
Oh yeah,
and he could have been part of that instead of beating up children and middle-aged men.
Yeah,
but he quit and did PCP at 15. So don't do drugs, kids. That's the lesson.
PCP. Yeah, that's the lesson. If you've got a good thing, try and keep it going and try and keep control of yourself. Pretty much.
Exactly. And he still had the music bug going because he started recording with a group under the name Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and earned a hit song that might or will be playing in your head when I say it. You know, that Good Vibration song? Are you going to sing it? You can sing it. No?
Is that... If you ain't in it to win it, get the hell out. Is that it? No, that's a different one. I don't know. I can't remember.
It's just got that high pitch. Good vibrations.
Oh yeah. No, I remember it. Yeah, holy shit. And that
sample.
Don't Kimberly. Don't do it.
That's why I don't sing.
Too late. Yeah. I have a wonderful falsetto, Kimberly. I'll have you know that. I could do a Bee Gees like that, and you wouldn't know the difference. You'd be like, "Oh my god, Robin Gibb's still alive."
Maybe we should do that one day.
That's
That'll be a
Patreon
whole
special
Patreon.
coming up. Try join our Patreon and listen to us sing in falsetto. Neither of us are trained singers, so that's really cool. So yeah, he was, and his thing came with like a very specific image as well, didn't it? Like his videos, he was pretty good as well. Like,
Absolutely.
wasn't Eminem, but he was pretty decent. I don't want that song stuck in my head.
See, that single, that record was produced by his brother Donnie, and it went all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 like right away.
Amazing.
It was later certified platinum as a single.
Mm-hmm. How much of that success do you think is down to the musicianship of the record, and how much of that is down to him looking like he did at the time?
I think the production value of that first single and him looking how he did for that first one were like equal parts. And then
for sure,
any success after that, because the next two singles sucked so bad that it was just all looks.
Yeah, for sure.
But following that and those next two singles, he had a little bit of an anger flare up.
I remember
92 happens. He fractures the jaw of his neighbor, and there's some murky circumstances around it, but like, I don't know. If you want to know more, like you can look it up yourself. I didn't have a whole lot of time because I'm a procrastinator. You guys, you're welcome. Court documents state that in this incident, Mark, quote, without provocation or cause, viciously and repeatedly kicked, quote, his neighbor in the face while another man held the victim to the ground. Oh,
I was going to say, Mark Wahlberg isn't a big guy, so that's some pretty impressive kickboxing he's got there.
He got out the ladder.
This guy was like, just like WWE, just like sprinting up a ladder and throwing his feet. This guy drop kicking him, but no, it was someone else holding him down. Man, this is beginning to remind me a little bit of like an uber aggressive version of Justin Bieber. You know, that period in time where he went on a fucking tear and nobody was safe. It's like that, only like basically just violence instead of being a little dickhead. You know?
Well, in this one, it kind of is weird too, a little bit, because you were thinking, okay, he had all that violent racist stuff going on. Yeah. What's this about? Well, according to his attorney, Mark and the other dude who happens to be black, were provoked by his neighbor when his neighbor called the other dude a racial slur. So they kicked his ass. Okay. So, it's a defense. And it would be a very valid grounds for someone losing their temper, for sure. And that's a really interesting turnaround of events. At what point do you think Mark Wahlberg addressed the obvious issues around racism? Do you think that's something that happened immediately after he went to prison, or as time's gone on, do you think? Because he doesn't seem to be the kind of guy I would call racist now. You know? Well, he didn't go to prison here because the lawsuit there for this was settled out of court. There was no criminal trial.
Lucky bastard. Yeah. So the neighbor got some money. That was smart.
Yeah. We'll never know what happened there. It was settled between the two parties, civilly.
That's right.
While that was going on, though, he was getting a lot of attention, like you said, for being a hot guy, and they weren't paying a lot of attention to what was going on while he was beating his neighbors and stuff. Yeah. For whatever reason.
It may have also helped his bad boy image a little bit.
Little bit. And he was, dancing around in his underwear in the Good Vibrations music video. And obviously in the Calvin
as well.
Yeah. Like he had a great physique. He's in that Calvin Klein underwear ads all through 92 on the billboards. He's in the TV ads with Kate Moss.
He must have made so much money.
Oh, he was raking it in. He's in that Annie Leibovitz ad. Yeah.
That's right. The famous one. Yeah.
He was killing it early 90s. Later in December of 92, while he was performing on the British TV show The Word.
Oh, The Word.
He praised, Shaba Ranks, who had stated that gay people should be crucified.
Oh, God. I remember that episode of The Word. So just a quick thing. I was a teenager at this point in time. I was watching The Word. That's how it would start. It's like there'd be this wild kind of crazy techno intro, and then it'd just be a guy at the end saying The Word. And The Word was notorious because it was late in Channel 4. Channel 4 had just started, and they were doing shows that nobody else would do. There was a show called Eurotrash, which was basically it was a series of documentaries hosted by a French guy and Jean-Paul Gaultier, as in the guy behind multiple famous perfumes, who, like, they would do stories about like German sex clubs, and you'd have graphic sex on Channel 4 at like 9:30 at night, and it was just, and that went for like 20 years on Channel 4 Eurotrash. It was the cheapest fucking thing I've ever seen, just an excuse for sex on TV. But they also had The Word, which was on very late, and The Word became notorious because anything went on that. Three notorious moments. Kurt Cobain and Nirvana went on The Word, and Kurt Cobain, they were about to play Smells Like Teen Spirit, and before they start, they're literally doing the dun 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 dun, and Kurt Cobain just leans into the microphone and goes, "Courtney Love is the best fuck in the world," and then just leans back. And they couldn't bleep it out because it was live. And there was another bit where a female punk band, and I can't remember the name of them, were performing, and the mosh pit was going insane, just as it was for the Nirvana thing. The bassist decided to pull her pants down and take a shit on the stage, live on air, at like 10:30 at night. Well, that was no fun to watch, even as a teenager. I'm like, is she having a poo? And the other one was
Bikini Kill.
It may have been. Yes, it may have been. But the other one was the Shakademus thing that you mentioned there. Shakademus and Pliers was the group. God knows who Pliers was. But Shakademus went on about how gay people were evil and should be crucified. And the host, Mark Lamar, just went, "Oh, I'm not talking to you anymore," and physically turned around and turned away from the host. And the audience cheered. And Shakademus just had to sort of sit there and take it. And he was like, I was very lucky that he didn't beat the shit out of me at that moment, because I completely humiliated him live on air. So for Mark Wahlberg to say he liked Shakademus, like maybe he liked the music, did he say he liked the music, or was it him supporting his statements?
I don't know. He just praised him. That was he just ended up getting condemned by GLAAD for his comments, and then that kind of cost him a little bit of latitude with Calvin Klein. He ended up shifting from music through modeling, and then that is what jumped him into television, because he was moving out of modeling because of some of the flack off of that. Not that that got him canceled.
No,
that just moved me into the next section. That's where we went.
Okay.
That's at that same point he drops the marquee off the mark.
Yeah.
And it's not off there though, because I used it just like 5 minutes ago. So it's sticking around forever, and I don't care what he does. I'm gonna call him Marky Mark forever.
For sure.
Until he punches me in the face, I imagine, or hits me
Please
with a
don't do that. Tiny angry man. Yeah.
And through the 90s and 2000s, he was like super hot. Well, I mean, he's like super hot through forever. He's like a very
consistent worker.
Like, I was not going to say amazing actor, but he's got an amazing filmography.
Yeah, I feel like as an actor, like he was always around, and he was doing like a certain type of film, and he was one of those things that Hollywood loves. He could be relied upon to make them money. Pretty much no matter what he was in, like it would do quite well. I don't think I ever took him seriously until I saw him in The Departed, when I was like, he's holding his own with some big heavyweights here.
Yeah, you know? He did a good job in that one. And
really
like through the 90s, he was in The Renaissance Man, which was cool. I thought he did a good job in The Basketball Diaries.
Yes. Oh, that's a tough watch.
Fear was solid.
Fear's good. Fear's a good film. I would anyone thinking of watching The Basketball Diaries, that is a tough watch. Be careful if you're going to go in and watch that. Some very disturbing stuff happens in that film. Yeah.
Well, it's old though.
Yeah, it's old. So.
But yeah, he was in just so much stuff. I got like a whole list here, and I was going to highlight just the important ones, and it's like 90% highlighted. So you can go check that out yourself. Everybody knows what he's in. He's in like everything. 2001, Mark and Rhea Durham started dating.
Okay.
And then they also started humping like bunnies, which is totally understandable because look at them, both of them.
Two young hot people. It's going to happen. Yeah.
They popped out 3 kids in 7 years, and then they got married in 2009. Then they had another kid for good measure.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at the same time, when they met, he founded the Youth Foundation for raising and distributing funds for youth service and enrichment programs. And he got involved and active with the Good Shepherd Center for Homeless Women and Children. So he's turning things around,
really
doing really good things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just doing a bunch of awesome films, being super consistent, which means that his reputation for stuff that happened in the past, in terms of the way Hollywood and American audiences see him, that's kind of done with. Like that's in the past now. So they're like, we're over this. We enjoy this work. Keep doing it.
2006, somebody starts digging up a little bit of mud, and his violent past and racially charged attacks surface a little bit. And he meets it like with honor and comes out and says the right thing for him to do is to meet with Johnny Trin and make amends, which I guess he did in 2016.
That's right. Yeah.
Like 10 years later, it took him a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of controversy.
That, though, so just before that as well, slightly before that, 2014, his victim, Johnny Trin, actually, because when you mentioned, we were talking about this before, I looked into it on the Guardian website. Johnny Trin said, we should let this go. He was a kid. I've made peace with it. We should all move on. And Mark Wahlberg was very moved by that. And that's really good that this person has been able to find peace even after this horrible thing happened to them. So, I think that was like laying the groundwork for some of the redemption that we're talking about here. But you were going to say there's something else here.
Well, I was going to say there's some controversy and a lot of people that are wanting to say that it was 2014. His company, the Whalbergers restaurants, were applying for liquor licenses, and he was also applying for a pardon to get rid of those crimes, have them expunged off his record so he could get that liquor license. That's why he was saying and getting out there and trying to get the forgiveness in from Johnny for the assault.
Which is understandable,
But Johnny Trin did release the public statement forgiving him. I guess it is water under the bridge, like you said.
Yeah,
he was a kid. He did make those atonement moves, and at this point, I'm not even sure why I chose him as an idiot, because he's made some really smart business moves too.
Yeah, really good moves. He's very smart. I read somewhere as well, looking him up, he's worth over $450 million. So, and this is a guy who's primarily an actor. That's a lot of money for an actor.
Yeah, well, 2013, he bought an equity interest in Barbados Tridents, which is a cricket team.
Oh, cool.
He did it right after being introduced to it by his friend, is it Ajmal Khan, who's the club's chairman and Caribbean Premier League's founder.
That sounds right.
And then following that purchase, he came out and stated, quote, "I'm a huge cricket fan now." And that was that.
That's so cool. I love that. There is something about the idea of Mark Wahlberg just rocking up at a cricket ground. And I've got to tell you, cricket is very much like baseball in that it lasts all fucking day. Very little happens. But actually, if you want to be in a large crowd of people, and we're talking thousands of people, that are all just there to chill out, and it's mostly slow drinking beer, having carb infused food, and just talking, catching up, occasionally clapping and stuff. It's not like a high intensity, adrenaline filled experience constantly. It's something you do over 3, 4, 5 hours. You go there, you maybe have 1 or 2 beers, you chill out, you watch something happen, and you just enjoy the weather. Usually it's played in very good weather conditions, and that's kind of the attraction of cricket for me, is that it's kind of peaceful to watch live. And I think that's really great. If that's something that he gets out of it, then hell yeah. It can be exciting at times, but generally it's pretty chilled out.
Well, I gotta ask, because you do good impressions, can you do a Mark Wahlberg? Because if you could do a Mark Wahlberg, I want you to say, "I'm a huge cricket fan now. Say hello to your mother for me."
Say hello to your mother for me, all right? I keep going back to Saturday Night Live, and I think you know what I'm going to say here. Andy Samberg does the most flawless Mark Wahlberg impression, and it's Mark Wahlberg at a fucking petting zoo for some reason. He's like, "What you doing there? What was it? Hey there, dog. nice to meet you. Say hello to your mother for me, all right? It's so perfect. I cannot go back and watch it. The thing is, the sketch is nothing. It's not like there's no like beginning, middle, punchline, end, any of that. It's just Andy Samberg doing Mark Wahlberg in a really weird scenario where he's like vaguely threatening as well. Like he's a little bit too intense for the petting zoo. It's like, you're looking good, eh? You like your collar? And he's like a little bit too hyped for it. It's really good. Mark Wahlberg is one that I can do with a bit of practice. I would need a bit of time, but he's very Boston. He does the same, like you say, the same character in most films. But yeah, I could do a Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, wow. So are you done? Because I think there's one thing we've missed off here.
Oh no, I've got more. I was going to go into that. In 2015, he recruited Sean Puffy Combs and another billionaire, Ronald Burkle, into investing in Aqua Hydrate, which is a bottled water brand that he discovered. Cool. Now they own a majority stake in the company still. Nice. He's also in StockX, which is the sneakerhead website where you can go buy shoes, like where they do like resale Nikes, Jordans. Like that's awesome. Like where I bought my wife's birthday Jordans.
That's really great. The resale market's on fire right now. Like,
oh yeah,
that's really cool.
He's heavy into GNC. This is investment tips here. Follow Mark. F45 Fitness. He's got a Chevy dealership or 5, I think.
Wow.
And he's diversified. He's
very
just
smart.
got named the the chief brand officer for that F45 training, which is like a franchise fitness chain in Australia.
That's amazing.
Just got into tequila with the Flecha Azul brand in 2021.
Very smart. A lot of celebrities getting into alcohol. There are alcohol brands at the moment. Ryan Reynolds, the guys from Always Sunny, got their own brand now. So
they're all following Turtle, man, from Entourage.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one of his projects.
And then 2021, Mark and producing manager Steve Levinson from Ballers, the HBO show.
Yeah.
They started the Ballers Report, which is an online platform that does it features inspiring businesses, entertainment and sports articles, videos, podcasts, stuff like that.
Fun.
Sounds kind of cool. I haven't checked it out yet, but I'm going to.
Can we join?
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
guys.
Oh, yeah, we're ballers.
Yeah, we are. Fuck yeah. Look at me. Cardigan.
Like I said, I don't even know how I landed on him at this point. I just wanted to talk about Mark Wahlberg, I guess. He doesn't appear to be much of an idiot at all. He might have been an asshole when he was a kid.
Yeah. I think also there's a couple of moments where so there's a couple of things you missed off. One, there we go. He's been a racist teen, a buff culture vulture, a decent actor, a super Catholic millionaire. Yeah, I was going to talk about that. And now he's a religious app frontman. Yeah, I've seen adverts.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. He's lived a life for sure.
I couldn't wrap my head around that religious app thing. It didn't make sense to me, so I didn't have time to go into it.
I'm always skeptical of my wife is heavily involved in the Catholic Church. So I hear about stuff in Christianity and other religions as well. I'm always a little bit skeptical of some of the religious extra bits here and there. It just feels a little bit like they're kind of taking advantage sometimes, but I'm not saying he is, but I'm just a little bit more skeptical of that because you're kind of leaning on a part of people that they can't argue with. It makes sense to no one. Yeah, I'm sure it makes sense.
Okay, good. I'm not alone.
So
we need an app and a bracelet stat.
Yes, a really good bracelet that changes your vibrations, blah blah blah. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with Mark Wahlberg, and Kimberly briefly touched on it there. The religious thing, he got into a little bit of trouble for two things. One, he went on Top Gear, and they said, so I think they asked him a question about Scientology. And they were like, are you a Scientologist? Like, no, I'm not into that shit, man. I've got my own church. It's the one with Jesus, baby. And shit like that. That's what he said. I think I don't know if he mentioned Tom Cruise. I feel like he did. But it was just one of those moments where it's like, he probably hasn't had as much media training as he needs to, and he's not done the political thing. The other one, which I think most people will be more familiar with is when he talked about 9/11, and he said that
the
if he
plane.
was on that plane, shit would have gone down differently, and it started a flood of memes of Mark Wahlberg like fly kicking the terrorists, or like, because like, okay, yes, I get it, you're a tough guy, you're violent, you're probably trained in a bunch of martial arts at this point because of the stuff you've done in films, but really, what are you going to do in that situation? There were 4 of them, they were armed with knives but still armed. What are you going to do, Mark? You would die.
I
No
almost made a
offense,
really
mate.
bad joke that if they were black children or middle-aged Asian men, he would have been fucking game
Well,
on.
they were minorities, so he could have gone apeshit. Give him a stick, and he. No, we're not going to do those jokes.
I did totally leave that out, and I feel bad for that because I read about it, but it was just too dumb.
It's kind of stupid, but then again, like, celebrities say he would have died. Like, Kimberly's absolutely right, he would have died. But around about that time, there was a lot of fervor. After 9/11, and one of the 2 stupidest quotes I heard around this time. One of them was from Bruce Willis, who offered his services to George W. Bush to enlist in the army. And I think George Bush had to put out a message saying, no, that's okay. We don't need like 50-year-old actors on the front lines of this fucking crazy war. And the other one was a boy band member of, I want to say 5. I don't know if that's accurate. No, it was a different boy band. Anyway, this guy. No, it was like a British boy band. It was a guy called Lee something, and they were asking him. It was just like days after 9/11, and he was like, "Fuck 9/11. Those people don't mean anything. What about all the whales that are being killed?" And the interviewer was like, "What are you doing? What is wrong with you?" Yeah.
Wow.
So people were in a weird way around that time, and for him to say, he's quite a patriotic guy. He's quite an intense dude too, so that makes sense. I've always been quite surprised by Mark Wahlberg. Like, when I saw him in The Other Guys, I was impressed at how funny he was. Didn't really think I'd get that side of him.
Yeah. You know what? I skipped the whole paragraph I talked about, the pay disparaging thing, where he got paid $1.5 million to do the reshoots on the movie where they had to recast Kevin Spacey after he had the sex stuff.
Right.
He went back to do reshoots and got 1.5 million. And gosh, I can't remember her name. The girl from Dawson's Creek.
Oh,
Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams.
Yeah, she got $1,000.
$1,000?
Yeah.
I wouldn't fucking show up for that money. What the fuck?
Well, people got upset because like she had to do as much work, and he got so much more money because, like, assumedly, because he was a dude. But he ended up donating that to the awareness for that Time's Up.
Yeah, good, because that's bullshit.
Yeah,
pay people equally. What the fuck is wrong with you? That is crazy, man. And she is, like, I know Mark Wahlberg, you just said, nominated for an Oscar. She's been nominated for a bunch, or he's been nominated for 2 Oscars. She's been nominated for a bunch too. Michelle Williams is an excellent actress. She's really good in what's that Martin Scorsese film with Leonardo DiCaprio where he's a police officer investigating something, but he might also be insane? Shutter Island.
Oh, yeah,
she's amazing in that. Really talented actress, and I had a big fucking crush on her. She's fucking beautiful, but like $1,000? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's the money you'd give to your driver to drive you backwards and forwards for the reshoots for that period of time, right?
Barely extra money.
I know. Fuck that. But yeah, no, I feel like with Mark Wahlberg, I can see why you chose him, because there's enough stuff here in his past for you to be like, okay, there were some serious issues there. And like you said, he came from a broken home when he was very young. Tough part of Boston. And Boston, I've been there only briefly, like a couple of days, but it was long enough for me to go, yeah, I reckon, because I've lived near and around some really, what's the word? Like tough parts of Wales and the UK, like where I've lived all over. Like, I've seen deprivation and like people really struggling to get by. So I kind of understand. When I went to Boston, I was like, oh yeah, I feel it here, like the parts of the Southie guys and stuff, like the part that's really, really difficult. So, like, I get it. Like, it's a difficult world, and he was surrounded by a bunch of people that were probably really poor influences on him when really he should have had good influences in his life. So I can see why you chose him. And that shit that happened when he was a kid, it was terrible. And as he got older, the instances of his misbehavior got less and less. Certainly, like the violence towards the neighbor thing, that wasn't great, obviously, and like the instances of potential homophobia. Yeah, and as Kimberly said here, he's definitely an idiot. I feel like he has the views he had as a kid. Hollywood just taught him how to hide it. I mean, there is the potential for that to be the case, but I'm hoping that he has mellowed with age and learned a bit more respect and gotten a better worldview as he's gotten older, which happens hopefully with a lot of radicalized kids and extreme kids. So for this, and he hasn't, I mean, we go over the whole, like, he hasn't killed anyone. He nearly did. But I would say for Mark Wahlberg, given the good he's done since, and he's done a lot of good, and the fact that he seems to be a changed man for the most part, like I haven't heard anything bad about Mark Wahlberg for like 30 years.
Well, and he doesn't seem to be putting out any crazy messages or bad information or anything dangerous or scary to me that I've run across, which is my biggest thing with celebrities is when they like put out suspect shit. Yeah. It's like, dude, people trust you. Be careful, man.
Yeah, I completely get that. And like, you don't hear anything about, him and drugs anymore. Doesn't seem to have a drinking problem. It seems to have a really nice balanced family life, which I mean, people said that about Mel Gibson for the longest time, but I mean, he seems to be doing really well. He seems to be doing all the right things, seems to be a good guy, and seems to have learned from the past. I'm hoping it's not the case that he's just gotten really good at hiding it, because I feel like a lot of people would no longer be like, stuff would have leaked. I feel like stuff, if he'd been like slightly racist or homophobic on set, like something would have come out by now. I feel like,
I would think so.
Like the stuff.
Or he's got enough money that it doesn't.
Maybe he does, maybe. But I feel like with Mark Wahlberg, I'm happy going with like a 55 for Mark.
Yeah.
Because there was that shit in his youth, and there have been a couple of instances since then. But he's done really, really well to turn his life around and to make a positive impact on the world. Actually, screw that. I'm going to go lower. I'm going to go like 40. I'm going to drop it significantly because that shit is in the past, and you shouldn't keep beating people with the same stick. I watched the oh god, I just said that. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. I watched the Oscars, and I was kind of shocked because like Jimmy Kimmel Kimmel, or is it the other one?
I didn't watch him.
One of the Jimmys did a really good job hosting it. I think it's Kimmel. But he did that fucking same joke about Robert Downey Jr. Like, oh, yeah, you were in drugs rehab and you ended up in prison. And silence in the audience. And the camera cut to Robert Downey Jr. And he's just sat there going, move on. Like that. That's literally what he did. And I was like, yeah, like fucking let that go. This man has rebuilt his life. He's now doing very good things. He's, a very devoted family man. He's doing a lot of great work. And at a certain point, you just have to let that go.
Yeah, like what was that, 30 years ago?
That was 30 years ago. And he knew he was in trouble at the time. He said to the judge when he was arrested for various breaches of his parole and probation, he was like, it's like you have a gun in your mouth and you love the taste of lead. That's how he described being an addict. And that's really accurate. You can't stop a lot of the time. So
addiction's bad, man.
Really bad. And whatever was going on with Mark Wahlberg, whether that was linked to addiction or just like really bad behavior and terrible choices in life, we need to let that go now. Once someone's thing is done, move on, give them the chance and let them take it. The world needs to give more second chances and third chances and fourth chances. You can't give up on people. That's how you make more victims. So, you put people, you cast them out of society. Chances are they're going to behave like they're not part of society anymore, and that's bad for everyone. So find it in your heart to forgive people. And I feel like Mark Wahlberg, 40. I think I'll go. Final score for Mark Wahlberg.
Sounds good. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. So while yours is definitely a redemption arc, for sure, with really interesting highs and lows, mine is a really interesting case. Now, I want to say that the person I'm about to talk about, usually when you hear about people in this field of work, this profession, they generally have certain characteristics, which is they're super aggressive. They are like alpha males. They're super angry. They're very violent. They're very controlling. They're conniving. They're ruthless. This guy was the most successful person doing what he was doing, and he was none of those things. He was the complete opposite.
You're talking about marriage counselors, right?
Not quite. No. To the point where he earned the nickname that was probably it was the name of his most successful production in his life, his autobiography, Mr. Nice. Ooh. So, yes, I'm going to talk today about Howard Marks, the nicest crime lord ever.
That's like scary. Like that's a disturbing title.
It really is.
Crime lord ever.
Entirely accurate, and I'll tell you why. And also, just for clarification, Howard is no relation, and I've had to make a list here, to Chico, Harpo, Groucho, Zeppo, Carl, or Richard Marx. Okay. So, yeah, none of those people. Wherever you go, whatever you do, Marxism will be right here waiting for you. None of that. No, that's not him. He's not Richard Marx's brother. He's not Karl Marx's great-great-grandson, although he is related to a famous pirate. So we'll get to that later. And when you hear it, you're like, oh, yeah, no, I've seen that. And I see it. Yeah, you totally see the resemblance.
Nice.
So let me tell you about Howard Marks. Dennis Howard Marks was born in Config Hill near Bridgend, Wales, the son of Dennis Marks, a captain in the Merchant Navy, and Edna, a teacher. Brought up as a Baptist, he later turned to Buddhism, though he did not become a devout follower. When you understand where he went with his life, you can, Buddhism works. He attended Garu Grammar School in Pontycuma, and he gained a place at Balliol College, Oxford, which is really rare for Welsh kids who went to grammar schools like that. That's really impressive. He impressed Russell Meigs in his interview and read physics there from 1964 to 1967. He is a physics genius.
Okay, so that's grades earned him into Oxford?
Yes. It's weird because Oxford and Cambridge, two biggest universities in the UK in terms of like prestige, they're always in like the top 5 of the world every year when they do these rankings. They do have things where they look for bright talents that aren't always from very super wealthy family backgrounds. Cambridge in particular brings in people on scholarships that have like absolutely no money, but they're like, we see great things in you and we want you to have the best opportunities possible. So there are scholarships available for people who show exceptional promise, and Howard Marks was one of those people, particularly in physics. He was very, very talented. But he was also hanging around with a bunch of Tories who were super landed gentry, and we'll get to that in a minute. He read physics there from 1964 to 1967. At the university, he was first introduced to cannabis by Dennis Irving. I saw that. After his, this is really sad. So after his friend Joshua Macmillan died, Marks swore off ever getting involved with hard drugs. So Joshua Macmillan's death was a bit of a scandal, or like a high-profile news story at the time, because he was the son of the Conservative MP Maurice Macmillan and the grandson of former Cold War era British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, who was like Kennedy's go-to guy in the UK and did a lot of stuff around the Cuban Missile Crisis, was go-between with the Russians as well. Harold Macmillan doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, mostly because he's a Tory. And he did some horrible shit, but he was actually a very effective prime minister at keeping the peace around this time. Also, Joshua Macmillan was a member of the Macmillan family, obviously, that owns a publishing house called Macmillan Publishing, who are responsible for the publication, the original publication of some of the most influential books of all time, including and not limited to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Jungle Book, Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, Frankenstein, A Picture of Dorian Gray, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang Flies Again.
Nice.
That last one's a joke. Because that's it. That's
I don't know.
Children's thing.
What?
That's a shit children's book. So, yeah. But the rest of them are big name books. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Macmillan's huge.
That's.
I didn't know that he was a prime minister.
Oh, yeah. Harold Macmillan was a really successful prime minister for the most part. I mean, it was the 60s, so kind of stumbled on success, but yeah.
Not real huge on UK history in the 60s.
Sure, yeah.
Not real huge on the US history in the 60s, apparently.
No, but Harold Macmillan, so his grandson, Joshua Macmillan, died. I think it was heroin. I think it was a heroin overdose. And at that point, Howard Marks, who'd been a big friend of his, was like, I'm never getting involved in anything harder than hash ever again.
Okay.
And through a mixture of cheating and last-minute cramming, he passed his finals because this was despite months of doing nothing but drugs rather than attending classes, and a serious infection he developed a few weeks before the exams. He was coughing throughout the entire exam, basically nearly passed out doing it. In 1967, he began training as a teacher and married Ilza Kadagis, a Latvian student at St Anne's College, Oxford, who was also training to become a teacher. Unfortunately, being a teacher wasn't his thing because he's a nice man, and he didn't like the corporal punishment that was around at that time, where you had to beat children, basically, if they misbehaved with rulers and shit.
They forced teachers to
It was
beat
expected.
the kids?
Yes.
Oh.
It was expected. It was either a ruler officially, or like a shoe, or like it was hardcore, and that shit went on like till I started school. Like that's how crazy the UK education system was.
Man, the good old days.
The good old days when you would beat children like relentlessly. He couldn't do it, so he gave up on teaching training. What were you going to say?
No, just like what the hell were we thinking?
I think particularly in the UK, we were still stuck on this ridiculous Victorian, and we still are to a certain extent, these Victorian values of like a children should be seen and not heard. And like, just like there's an empiricism to it where like, oh, we know the best, we're the smartest people, and shut the fuck up, child. And, just that there's that. And also like the thing where we hang on to traditional conservative values that are bound to Victorian era empire building. It's really gross, and it's still going on in this country. It scares me a little bit.
I wish we would just realize and look at how dumb and wrong they've been so often throughout history, and like just go, hey, sorry, go ahead.
No, like, we massacred dozens, millions of people worldwide, but we've got nice bridges now. Like we've got a lovely dome in London. He didn't become a teacher. He gave up teaching to continue his education at the University of London, then back to Balliol College, Oxford, and then on to the University of Sussex from 1969 to 1970 to study the philosophy of science.
Okay. Back to the physics?
Yeah, basically, he's now doing like implications of science, like on the wider world and shit. Feels like he's trying to avoid the real world to a certain extent at this point, because that's like 3 different university degrees he's got, but he's smart, so he clearly works. Though involved with drugs at university, he sold cannabis only to his friends and acquaintances until 1970, when he was persuaded to assist Graham Plinston, who had been arrested in Germany on drug trafficking charges. And that's not a place you want to be arrested for that in the 1970s. Hopefully in West Germany, not East Germany. Though Plinston through Plynston, he met Mohammed Durrani, a Pakistani hashish exporter who was a descendant of the Durranis who ruled Afghanistan in the 19th century. So this guy is a member of the Afghanistan royal lineage.
Okay.
Who is dealing massive amounts of drugs. With Plynston behind bars, Durrani offered Marks the opportunity to sell the drug on a large scale in London. Marks, jumping at the opportunity, formed a four-way partnership with Charlie Radcliffe, Charlie Weatherly, and a dealer named Jarvis. Durrani never contacted them, unfortunately. That whole thing just fell through. So he just... he and the group went round to other smaller drug dealers and they got together a small quantity of hashish from various sources and began selling the drug in Oxford, Brighton, and London to like high-end clients who he had connections with through Oxford and the various universities and stuff.
Okay, so he's not selling the mass quantities of that good Afghani weed.
No, he's not selling that. He's like selling the local shit that he can get his hands on for now and selling it at parties to like rich people he went to university with, and he's like getting a nice markup on it. It's very smart, but they probably didn't realize they were getting like street level, like quite shitty stuff.
It's safer, I guess.
It's for sure absolutely safer, and he's notoriously discreet. Howard Marks, he does not tell anyone anything except later on, and we'll get to that. After 6 months, he returned to Germany with the money he'd made to help bail out Plynston. Marks was a useful means of transferring money, as he didn't have a criminal record. He was also very adept at transporting drugs over borders, posing as a stamp collector and salesman. So he was like, oh, I go from town to town and I collect stamps and then I sell them on the market. And what he was actually doing in these like cars that would never arouse suspicion, they're like, you've clearly bought this new 10 years ago, but now it's kind of a piece of shit. So it's like, stamp collecting does okay, but wearing secondhand clothes, all of that. And the border people in mainland Europe never like tore his car apart, because if they had, they'd have found hundreds of pounds of marijuana all over the thing in various seats and hidden compartments and stuff. They just never suspected, and they rarely had sniffer dogs because he was going over land borders. He wasn't flying anywhere. So really clever.
So he wasn't just hiding quantities of weed in his priest hole that he could get through. He was coming through with mass quantities.
No, he was leaving the priest hole untouched and burying it in his car hole. So that's a Simpsons joke. Now a free man, Plynston gave Marks a job transporting hashish in Frankfurt. Marks, in turn, hired a New Zealand smuggler named Lang as his driver. After paying Marks £5,000 for his work in Frankfurt, the equivalent of £60,000 in 2024 money.
That's
decent.
That's good.
Decent. Got to remember as well, 1970s, a house would have cost about £1,000, something like that.
Damn.
So this was good money right there. Plynston then sold hashish to Marks and his three friends, Radcliffe, Weatherly, and Jarvis, in London. In selling 650 kilograms within a week, the four men made a profit of £20,000. That's 240 or £1,000 or $305,000 in 2024 money.
In how long?
In a week.
Oh my god,
that's not bad, is it?
Like I don't condone
a week.
I don't condone criminal activity and stuff.
No,
but like,
no, we don't condone any criminal.
God, I want to sell hash in the UK in the 60s, 70s.
70s. No fingerprinting, no like bank scrutiny. Where's all this money come from? It's like, oh, good for you, Welshman. Here's a bank account or several. Split four ways. That's like a very good year's income for 1970. Yeah, like that's more than enough to retire on at that point. That's how crazy that money is. Durrani then arranged for hashish to be smuggled in the furniture of Pakistani diplomats who were moving to London. That is so smart.
Yeah.
Jesus.
They're definitely not using that.
Yeah. Like, no wonder diplomats are so dodgy. Kimberly, geez. You wait. I just want to apologize in advance. I have spent so much time on inflation calculators for the sums of money this man has made for other people. Also, I want to point out, I want you to bring up in your mind a little bingo card of every single criminal organization you can think of, the big names, and every like government agency that's kind of dodgy, and tick them off as I mention them, because this motherfucker has worked with everyone and they all loved him, which is the weird thing. Durrani arranged for them to smuggle hashish through the furniture of the Pakistani diplomats who were moving to London. Marks would then intercept the furniture to find the drugs. This arrangement netted him a profit of £7,500 or £90,000 in 2024 money.
Oh my goodness.
Decent, but like not quite on the scale that I think they were hoping for, because obviously it's only furniture, you know.
Well, how many diplomats are moving?
I guess like it would be because the diplomats will move with the staff. So they'll come with like, you know, someone to keep their house, like a chef. They'll have a bunch of people come with them as part of their entourage, and you'll just smuggle shit through their furniture as well. So, yeah, that's a lot of drugs.
Are you moving them though? Like,
I guess as a diplomat, they'll have to go on diplomatic missions. So they might come back with gratuities from other countries. Rugs, you know, furniture, especially if they're going back to Pakistan. You know, you're talking about Silk Road exports, you know, really fine furniture. That's totally foreseeable as a transportation route, and they have diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch their shit. So, man, yeah, that's a very smart move. Marks expanded his enterprise, no shit, employing two friends from Wales, Mike Bell and David Thomas, to stash the drugs and help with the transportation. The gang became dissatisfied with the way the profits were being split. 80% of the money they made went to Durrani. That's too much. So this extremely powerful man from Afghanistan, they decided to cut him out, and they contacted someone called James McCann instead to form their own thing with him. James McCann, normal guy, connections to drugs slightly. No, he was a gun runner for the Provisional IRA.
I was going to say the name sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he's swapped a descendant of Afghanistan royalty for the IRA.
That seems more dangerous.
Way more dangerous. And also, I guess you've got the protection of the IRA if Durrani wants to take it out on you. But actually, he remained close friends with Durrani. He was just like, listen, we're going to set up our own thing. We'll occasionally do work for you as well, freelance, but we're going to go over here and work with the IRA. You know, the people who blow shit up.
Yeah.
Jesus. Go on. Sorry, it's important.
It seems like dangerous people to be close to.
For sure. But it's also important to point out, I've made a note of it here, Marks is known as being super relaxed, laid-back person who rarely got confrontational with anyone and was generally warm, kind, and a fun person to be around, hence why you got the nickname Mr. Nice, and there's more on that later. He's also quite a big dude. He's like 6'3", quite burly, but like just smiles all the time.
It's because he was smoking weed all day long.
He was high as fuck all the time. He did not mind smoking his own supply purely because he's like transporting 650 kilos of the stuff. Like, yeah, you're going to roll a few blunts.
He's got extra.
So, yeah, one or two won't hurt. Marks and Plinston persuaded McCann, the guy from the IRA, to smuggle hashish into Ireland from Kabul. So they're getting the good stuff now, which the pair would then ferry over to Wales. So this would be Holyhead, I would imagine, and into England through the A55 into Liverpool. McCann would get the drugs into Ireland through the Freeport at Shannon Airport using his IRA connections. Marks avoided the attention of HM Revenue and Customs by creating a paper trail that indicated he made his money from selling stamps and now dresses. So apparently that must have been a really successful avenue, because making dresses and stamps would have probably not made you several £100,000 a year.
They were really, really fancy dresses, and they were those stamps that the Ponzi dude used to do.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. But also like the upside down Wright brothers plain thing that sold for like $1 million or something. Like, I guess there's money in stamps, or there was at the time, but I don't think so anymore.
Yeah, they were error stamps. He sells lots of error stamps.
That's what it is. Yeah, perfect scheme. By 1972, he was making £50,000 with each shipment, making anywhere between 8 to 12 shipments a year, meaning Marks and his drug gang were making between $7 to $9 million a year in today's money, meaning they'd only have to work for 2 to 3 years, then they could retire exceedingly wealthy, selling nothing but weed. Never anything hard.
Each?
Yeah, each.
Oh my goodness.
It's a lot of money. So much money. However, this success wasn't going unnoticed, obviously, because it's a shitload of drugs, and his life was about to take a very, very strange turn. Not the one that you would expect. You'd be like, oh, are the authorities on his trail? Yes, they are, but not the way you think they would be. By the end of the year, he was approached by Hamilton Macmillan, not of the Macmillans, different Macmillan, Macmillan instead of Macmillan. So it's like a different clan kind of.
So it's not a book deal.
No, it's not. No, it's not getting a book deal. Not yet. Anyway.
Okay.
When will the time machine be ready? Yeah, because definitely go back in time and maybe do this. No, we don't condone traveling back in time to become a drug lord.
Drugs.
Please don't do that. So he was approached by Hamilton Macmillan of the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a friend from Oxford University who recruited Marks to work for MI6 because of a bunch of reasons, and I'll list them for you now. His connections in the hashish production countries of Lebanon, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Obviously, MI6 is going to be interested in that region of the world. His contacts with the IRA. Obviously, MI6 super interested in what the IRA are up to, and also for his amazing ability to seduce women. So,
they're going to use him as a honeypot.
Yeah, he's basically a Welsh version of James Bond, only constantly stoned instead of riddled with every STI ever created.
I was friends with a guy just like that guy.
Really? I knew. So, me and my wife have a friend who she used to live with, who started dating a guy who was quite a bit older than her, who had been a guardsman for the Queen. And he had a business where he sold socks. And he would go all over the world selling these stocks, usually around about the time of major international events or incidents like the Olympics and stuff. I have to go to Brazil to sell my socks at the Olympics. I'm like, do you know? And he would like disappear for weeks at a time. And this is a guy who was in the army, he was in the police, Queen's Guardsman, kept himself in incredible shape for a guy in his like middle age. And we were like, I am convinced this man is a spy. 100%. I am 100% sure this man is a spy. Maybe he wasn't, but I don't know. Possibly. Anyway, back to Howard Marks, who is definitely a spy at this point. The next year, Marks began exporting cannabis to the United States to the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Yeah, you may not be familiar with them. They would hide the drugs in the music equipment of fictional British pop groups, and they would supposedly tour around the country, and the drums and the bass amps were full of weed. So
wow.
Smart. For a bit of context here, the Brotherhood of Eternal Love was an organization of drug users and distributors that operated from the mid-1960s through to the late 1970s in Orange County, California. They were dubbed the Hippie Mafia by the CIA.
Okay.
Know who
That's
they
why
are.
I know them.
There you go.
Okay.
So he's working with the IRA and the Hippie Mafia and MI6.
This is a fun story.
It gets so much fucking weirder, this guy. Marks further expanded his operations with other smugglers and other methods of trafficking, often using his Oxford connections to make things a bit easier. Because when you know people in Oxford, they generally end up in positions of power later in life, whether it's in government or in the army or in the police or whatever it is, these people stay in touch and they help each other out. It's kind of Masonic, but he's not a Mason, so I don't know, connections.
Yeah.
As McCann was in danger, so McCann at this point is wanted by the IRA because they found out that he's dealing drugs. He was in danger of being executed by the IRA should MI6 officially tip off the IRA about his involvement in drugs. Marks then gave up the smuggling operation at Shannon Airport, which is a smart move because if there's one group you don't want hunting you, it's the IRA. They don't use guns. They use fucking bombs and guns sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Bombs and guns and bombs.
Yes. Probably don't get involved with those people. Anyway, following the Little John affair, which was a big scandal in the UK at the time where the British Secret Services had recruited a member of the IRA to act as an agent provocateur, basically sabotaging shit. And unfortunately, he took it a little too seriously and a bunch of people died. So, yeah, that came out and MI6 had to clear house. They also ceased their relationship with Marks in 1973. While his American operation came to an end after police opened a speaker full of cannabis and arrested gang member James Gator, leading to other arrests in Europe. Marks was arrested by the Dutch police in 1973, but skipped bail in April 1974. The British press then made him a nationally known figure, reporting that he was feared abducted by the IRA for his connections with MI6. They leaked that he was with MI6.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's not going to help, is it? So, yeah, the IRA definitely want to talk to him now. Despite having most of his fortune confiscated by the authorities and being hunted by Interpol, the IRA, and the British police, Marks remained calm under pressure and made his way to Italy, where he lived in a Winnebago for 3 months before returning to England in secret in October 1974. Smooth motherfucker.
So he went and lived like a hippie.
He went and lived like a hippie, surrounded by weed and a little bit of money in Italy. Great place to live if you've got a little bit of money. The food is so cheap and amazing. Lived in Winnebago for 3 months, and then it's like, yeah, that's a long enough holiday. I'll come back home now. Marks then connected with Ernie Coombs, a member of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, with John Denby, a man with connections in the hashish production industry in Nepal. With the help of the fucking Yakuza.
Dude. Wow.
He's now in bed with the Yakuza. Large amounts of the drug will be exported to John F. Kennedy Airport in the guise of air conditioning units, where Don Brown's mob, headed by Carmine Galanti, would then take possession of the drugs. So the Yakuza, a Welsh dude, and the mob are doing this massive cannabis smuggling ring into the United States through JFK.
And the hippie mafia.
And the hippie mafia are involved. He's also still in touch with Durrani at this point. He's still got contacts in MI6. He's still got James McCann, who's part of the IRA. This fucking guy. A 500 kilogram deal was set up and executed on the 4th of July, 1975. I am assuming they chose that day because not many people would be working 4th of July.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Leaving Marks an incredibly wealthy man. Other deals up to 750 kilograms followed, and Marks continued to live under an assumed series of names in the United Kingdom. In 1976, he traveled to America and set up a 1,000 kilogram, 2,200 pound deal between Coombs and a guy called Lebanese Sam. No information about that dude other than the fact he's called Lebanese Sam. I don't think you want to ask questions about someone called that. And in that one deal, Marks made himself £300,000 in the process, which is about 1.2 million in today's money, about $1.5 million. One deal.
2,000 pounds of weed?
2,200 pounds of weed. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's a lot. It gets bigger.
That's a lot of Sheba.
That's a lot of weed. At this point, he was a one-man crew, so he kept most of the money of to himself. Oh, sorry, it was the equivalent of $2.7 million in 2024 for himself. So Winnebago's looking really good right now. He continued to regularly set up deals between his various American and Far East connections. In need of a new identity after his alias of Anthony Tunnicliffe was compromised in a police sting, in 1978 he bought Donald Nice's passport, earning himself the nickname Mr. Nice. That's where it came from. Yes, literally. Here's a quote from his amazing biography, Mr. Nice, about this period in time. It's one of the most interesting books I've ever read in my life. It's very matter of fact, kind of humorous, but like the stuff he's saying, you're like, this can't be real. But yes, it all happened. Between 1975 and 1978, 24 loads totaling 25 tons, 55,000 pounds of marijuana and hashish have been smuggled, successfully imported through JFK Airport, New York. They had involved the mafia, the Yakuza, the Brotherhood of the Eternal Love, the Thai Army, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, the Pakistani Armed Forces, Nepalese monks, and other individuals from all walks of life. The total profit made by all concerned was $48 million. They had a good run. So
did you do the conversion for today?
I did do the conversion. To put that into perspective, that figure of $48 million would be $250 million in 2024 money. They made that in 3 years smuggling weed.
Okay.
Through one airport.
More proof that the people that said they knew what the fuck they were doing have no idea what they were doing. They wasted all of that potential revenue by making shit illegal for no reason. Anyway.
I know. Think about the tax income. And like you could, and the thing is, this was cheap weed. They could have made a lot more money. Mark that up, people would have bought it, and you'd have had so much money. So $250 million in 3 years. And also to sum up it so far, in his 10-year drug kingpin career, he's worked with the mafia, the Yakuza, the Thai Army, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, the Pakistani Armed Forces, Nepalese monks, a member of Afghanistan royalty, the IRA, MI6, and a bunch of pot-loving hippies called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. We haven't even got to his future exploits, which involve the Triads, the Colombian cartel, and the fucking CIA.
Oh, yay.
Yes. How Howard Marks lived to be an old man is completely beyond me.
He didn't get out then?
He kept going. He
He's
kept
got
making
all that
more and
money.
more money. There's a certain point at which you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? And it does actually come for him a little bit later. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more money to be made yet. But think about that. He's worked with every major criminal and intelligence organization in the Western and the rest of the world. And yet he's not only still alive, most of them still want to work with him and they like him.
Yeah, like he's missing what? The KGB?
Only the KGB and like maybe a couple of other smaller organizations in like, I don't know, South America or Africa, but basically everyone at this point has worked with this guy. It's crazy. In the 1970s, the Trafficante crime family, under the leadership of Santo Trafficante Jr., were importing Colombian cannabis into the US on freighter ships, thus driving down the price of the drug on the streets in America, which hit his business a little bit hard. However, this didn't slow down his UK operations, as in December 1979, Trafficante exported 50 tons of cannabis in one load direct from Colombia to Marks and his contacts in the UK, enough to supply the entire British market of the drug for an entire year. Or
just one load?
Just one massive shipment of 50 tons of cannabis. Or to put it into more perspective for you, that would keep Woody Harrelson's house going for 72 hours. Yeah, man alive. Good point from Kimberly. His guardian angels were working double shifts. I I I agree. I think the thing that kept him under the radar is that he was useful to a lot of people, including official people, but also he's not killing anyone. He's not like offing competitors. He's just working with everyone, being super nice, being like a middleman, he's just hanging out. He's just a normal guy who's incredibly intelligent and very good at logistics. And
Yeah.
that's someone that is going to be around for a very long time. If you're like a crazy Tony Montana, fucking snorting drugs, shooting people, going crazy, slapping people, and all of that, you're going to die very quickly in this industry. But he is the nicest drug lord ever, and everyone likes him. And that's why he's still alive years later at this point. So
I like that his nickname isn't ironic. That's my favorite part.
yeah, he's genuinely nice, so it works. And he's just a Welsh boy from the South Wales valleys who's just happy to be making a shitload of money, you know. And why wouldn't he? Moving on to 1980 now, Marks was arrested by customs officers for his part in importing 15 million pounds of cannabis, or 61 million in 2024 money. Police had followed associates of the Trafficante family to a large stash of cannabis. When he was arrested, he was in possession of numerous pieces of incriminating evidence, along with £30,000 in cash. And again, I've done the conversion for that. Let me tell you, there's no one in the UK walking around with the equivalent of £122,000 in cash on their person at one time. That's like the entire income of a fucking town. The Prime Minister today, for doing the job of Prime Minister, doesn't earn £122,000 for doing that specific job. That's how much money he had.
What's the biggest bill you have?
£50 note.
50. How big is that stack going to be?
Man,
if you're carrying
he'd
that
have to have
cash.
several duffel bags.
Yeah.
You know, it just happens. Oh, I don't know, officer. I've sold a lot of stamps this month. You know, fucking hell, Howard. Jesus. Defended by Lord Hutchinson, because of course he'd been defended by a fucking lord. Marks pleaded not guilty, concocting a story that he was an agent for MI6, considering the fact that his relationship with MI6 ended in 1973, and that the Mexican Secret Service had enlisted him to help set up his identity as a drug smuggler in order to close the net on James McCann, wanted in Britain for his IRA activities.
Ooh.
Somehow, the jury bought this bullshit story and found him not guilty of drug smuggling, but guilty of using fake passports, which was, he did it. So, you know.
But,
yeah.
Could they not have just brought in somebody from MI6 to be like, no, it wasn't?
So they could, but MI6 would have had to have. They can only answer certain questions because obviously it's classified. Did you ever work with someone called Howard Marks? They would have had to have said yes. Can you tell us if you currently work with it? You couldn't have asked that question because it would reveal a bunch of people's identities. So everyone connected with Howard Marks would then be like, who else is working with MI6? They can't, you know.
Shit, that's pretty smart, man.
So fucking clever because so much of it is classified, but also it's kind of partially true. He was working with MI6 at one point, so he was like, "We'll just use this story," and his legal representative was like, "This is not going to work," and he's like, "Yeah, it'll fucking work." So
see, I feel like if you did that with the CIA, you would just get disappeared.
Yeah, basically, you'd be taken to an off-site location, whereas MI6 weren't into that at this time. Maybe they were. Anyway, Marks, for the fake passport thing, Marks was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, but was released after 5 days.
Wow.
I know. Having already served most of the time before his sentence was passed. So he was held in... what's the word? I can't remember the word.
Containment?
Yeah, basically, so that he couldn't like mess with the trial. But actually, in the UK, when people are held in prison before they're kind of sentenced or taken on trial, they have a pretty decent time in prison. Like, they have a lot more rights than people who are in prison. They have a lot more money to spend and access to visits and stuff like that. So it's a decent life. It's not great by any means, but 5 days you did.
Wow.
For effectively importing £61 million worth of drugs and being caught with evidence on him, including the equivalent of Wales's GDP in cash at the time. And he served 5 fucking days in prison.
No, not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal. However, the day he got out, it's called a gate arrest. HM Customs immediately arrested him for his part in the 1973 smuggling operation. But following a plea bargain and time off for remission, he served just 3 months of a 3-year sentence. So
it's still not bad.
It's
like, God,
this man kept the country in weed for an entire year by himself, and he's done like 3 months in prison for it.
Well, he kept the country in weed for an entire year by himself. He shouldn't have done any time.
He's a
hero.
Basically, yeah. Anyway, he was released in May 1982. Though most of his employees were still, I don't think they were getting pensions, were still in prison for the crime of which Marks had been acquitted. He spent the next year running a legitimate wine importing business, but he continued to spend lavishly, and he spent more money than he was making through the legitimate businesses, and he ran through the savings he'd made from drug smuggling in the 1970s because he just, he'd gotten used to a certain standard of living. Have you ever seen that scene in Succession where like Tom goes to a really fancy restaurant and like him and the cousin Greg cover their heads with napkins and they eat a fucking deep fried songbird? Like, that's the levels we're talking about here. Like, billionaire shit.
But still, you just get your money. Yeah, you have a savings, but get with a money manager, get your stuff into investments, put your stuff into legitimate investments, and you're going to return at least 5%, enough to live off of and still be a rich person.
Become like a decent landlord. Like charge slightly less than other landlords around. You'll be guaranteed rent for a bunch of years. He's definitely not paying mortgage on these places. Isn't that always the case? So much money and no self-control. I mean, yeah, it's like he should have just gotten out at this point and just managed his finances a little bit better, but he couldn't do it. So
it's the weed.
It's the weed. Yeah, he's getting too high. So in 1983, James McCann was still at large and his smuggling enterprise was flourishing. And despite the fact that Howard Marks had kind of sold him down the river a couple of times, he offered Marks the chance to sell 250 kilograms of cannabis. And Marks, needing the money, sort of accepted it. However, it seems to have been a setup because Dutch police immediately confiscated the full shipment and arrested Mickey Williams, a member of the London underworld who'd agreed to help Marks on the deal. Marks then traveled to the Far East, needing a new source. So he set up cannabis deals with Salim Malik, a Pakistani hashish exporter who he'd met through Durrani, who had since passed away from a fatal heart attack, probably drugs related, or maybe he was eating shitloads of songbirds as well. I don't know, but he was living like a prince. And a guy called Phil Sparrowhawk, an exporter from Bangkok with the coolest name ever. Phil Sparrowhawk. It's like a spy thing from the 60s or something,
Phil Sparrowhawk from Bangkok.
Yes. Amazing name. That can't be real. So they would smuggle their product over to Ernie Coombs, again, in America, who seems to have gotten away with most of this shit, and he's still working for the hippie mafia. So, yeah, he's doing well. He also arranged a 500-kilogram, 1,100-pound deal with Mickey Williams, who had traveled to Bangkok after his release from prison in Amsterdam. Marks laundered his money through various fronts: a travel agency, a paper mill, a wine importers, bulk water transportation company, and a secretarial service. It's like an episode of Ozark at this point.
Okay, yeah, he's diversifying his laundered funds.
Yeah, exactly. Like literally everywhere. And I bet none of them are under his real name.
Something
So,
just occurred to me though. The dude got arrested for weed in Amsterdam.
yeah, I know.
What the hell?
Different times.
Okay.
I guess like no, this is like you've got 1,001 kilograms here. That's 1 kilogram too much. Okay,
Yeah.
like that's excessive right there.
I mean,
sorry.
We've got listeners there. Maybe they can enlighten me. I don't know how it works over there. I know,
Yeah,
like,
I think
they're
it's
okay
like
with it, but not like using too much. I mean, that's probably too much.
I think like personal consumption. I also feel like that there was that thing in was it Pulp Fiction where they're like it's illegal to have cannabis on your person, but it's also illegal for the police to search you or some shit like that. Like it's a weird law. Who knows? But anyway, Holland high as anything, and also the happiest nation on earth. So who are we to doubt what they're doing over there? In 1984, he was approached to sell $300,000 worth of cannabis to a CIA agent looking to fund and arm the Mujahideen of Afghanistan in their war against the Soviet occupation. So that's Operation Cyclone with Charlie Wilson and them lot.
Aha.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's
So
the connection.
He's over there in Charlie Wilson's war now.
It is, yeah. That's part of the film they left out, where there's a Welsh guy going, "Yes, I'll sell you weed, and you can buy them bazookas and send them over to Afghanistan."
Oh man,
that's hilarious. The agent's contact on the APL ship, however, suffered a fatal heart attack and died on the journey to the United States, leaving because obviously they called an ambulance, and of course, like the fucking Navy's got to come out and Coast Guard, and they come out and there's just fucking weed everywhere. So the US officials took that, and the agent for the CIA subsequently fled to Brazil to avoid prosecution. Another classy move from the CIA there. That's like, get your house in order. Fuck me.
Oops.
Oh well. Another one down. Though under surveillance, Marks continued to expand his underworld operations and set up a massage parlor in Bangkok with the help of Phil Sparrowhawk. Yeah, I wonder what that was. With the help of Phil Sparrowhawk and another agent, another person to help him, Lord Moynihan, a British hereditary peer. So he inherited the lordship thing from his father, and going back to like William the fucking Conqueror, I guess. And he was a hereditary peer and a notorious playboy. I want to tell you about Lord Moynihan. He's fucking insane. He fled the UK in 1970 due to a bunch of fraud charges and set himself up in the Philippines, where he became like the most notorious drug runner in the entire Philippines, which is quite an achievement. In 1960, he was on a drunk out one night and challenged an American journalist to an actual honest duel that he won. Dueling was, you might think, a duel like with pistols or with like rapiers or something. No, the rules of the duel were very simple. You had to attack the other combatant with your buttocks.
What?
I know.
How do you do that?
That's what I'm not sure how you win a duel where you're attacking someone with your ass cheeks. He won, apparently. So maybe he just like rammed it into the guy's face. I don't know. But he won the duel, and I'd imagine whatever happened has probably been illustrated in subsequent issues of the Kama Sutra. I don't know. But that's the duel. He was like, "I'm a fucking American journalist. I challenge you to a duel." That's not been a thing for over 100 years. No, get your ass out. I'm going to just slap your ass around. Like, what the fuck?
I think that's not a duel. I think that's some sort of sex.
I think that's basically sex. It's basically what happened there. I'm the winner. I'm the one who won the sex duel.
To be fair, that's what I say after sex.
Yeah, I won. Finished first. In 1986, Marks settled in Mallorca and continued to make vast sums, smuggling Salim Malik's hashish into America. The DEA at this point are now tapping his phone and keeping him under surveillance. Having arrested Ernie Coombs, they came close to busting a large shipment of cannabis. When Marks was tipped off, the ship was redirected to Mauritius, and the operation aborted. Smart man.
Got it.
Yeah, well, he's outsmarting the DEA.
Yeah, that's
for a while.
Yeah, well, DEA sucks. They're scary. Like
the DEA are really scary, and clearly they're the only people that don't like him. So he continued to avoid DEA stings because they just kept setting him up. And he's like, no, I can fucking see that from a mile away. What's the matter with you? He continued to make millions and continue to add to his underworld contacts, finding that he could use Chinese triads to launder his drug money more effectively, thus becoming the first person to complete underworld bingo. Because that's it now. Like, other than the KGB, that's it, basically, at this point. You might think that Marx is a villain in all of this, but let me paint you a picture of the various parties involved in trying to work either with him or to flush him out at this point in time, track him down. Okay, so a Philippine brothel-owning member of the House of Lords, that's Moynihan, was staying at the house of the Spanish Chief Inspector of Police, Rafael Lifriau. So, bit of a conflict of interest there. The Lord was being watched by an American CIA operative who was staying at the house of an English criminal in Spain, a convicted criminal multiple times. The CIA operative was staying at this house at the same time that James McCann was living there, a wanted IRA terrorist and drug smuggler. Who's now working against Howard Marks. The IRA terrorist was discussing a Moroccan hashish deal with a Georgian pilot of Colombia's Medellin cartel. Organizing these scenarios was an ex-MI6 agent, Howard Marks, currently supervising the sale of 30 tons of Thai cannabis in Canada, and whose house could be found in Pakistan's major supplier of hashish, Malik.
Wow, man.
Attempting to understand the scenario was a solitary DEA agent who had to take time off for the investigation due to nervous exhaustion.
Yeah, I bet.
Keep track of it.
Well, yeah, like that's too many big hitters. That's like everybody. It's fucking, I'm out. You guys just do your thing.
That would drive Sherlock Holmes insane. Like, all of those pins on the board, like, hang on a minute, these people are all criminals. Wait, this one's a CIA agent. What's he doing hanging around with this person? And like, oh man.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay out of it. I think you guys are.
Let's just let this happen. Let's just let this drug deal happen. When friends of his were busted by the Mounties, however, Marx decided.
Of course it was.
Hey, what you doing with all that weed, eh? That's not maple syrup. Come over here. Marx decided to retire from drug smuggling to concentrate on his legitimate businesses, citing the fate of his friends and contacts who were either in jail, informing for the DEA, or smuggling heavier drugs, because he'd basically cornered the hash market at this point. In 1988, DEA agent Craig Lovato arrested both Howard and Judy Marks, his then wife, and extradited the couple to the United States. Arrests of those involved in Marx's various criminal investigations were made in Britain, Spain, the Philippines, Thailand, the Netherlands, Pakistan, Switzerland, the United States, and Canada. The fucking United Nations of drug dealing right there. Wow. Fuck me. An Olympic parade. Everyone's flag is just a weed symbol, a weed leaf. So, yeah.
Is there a movie of this? There's got to be.
Yes, there is. I'll get to that.
There needs to at least be a comedy of this.
It is.
Okay.
It's really good, actually. It's a really good film. This was the work of Operation Eclectic, set up in 1986 by both the DEA and Scotland Yard, and aided by numerous other law enforcement organizations around the world. The Marxes were eventually extradited to Florida, where Judy pleaded guilty to her small part in the racket and was released, having already served some months in prison in Spain. The money Marx made from his smuggling operations was spent on legal fees. He refused to plea bargain or to inform on his associates, gambling that he could once again convince a jury that the authorities had got the wrong man and that he was working for MI6. That ain't going to work twice.
Yeah. Should have switched it to CIA.
Well, yeah, actually, because that would have been accurate too. Fucking hell. As the trial began in 1990, Patrick Lane, his brother-in-law and fellow smuggler, wrote to Marx in prison to inform him that he was going to testify against him in a court to get a more lenient sentence. Yeah, it's good that he told him, though. Marx still was confident of beating the DEA in court, but Ernie Coombs, also agreed to testify for the prosecution so as to secure the release of his wife. The DEA were leveraging people's families at this point. That's how desperate they were to get Howard Marks. And at this point, Marks had little choice but to change his plea to guilty to racketeering charges, RICO style. So that's bad. He was sentenced to 25 years in jail and given a $50,000 fine, which is like, all right. I mean, do you want it in quarters? Like, I've got it here. Though he had originally been sentenced to 15 years, he was taken back into court after the judge realized he had misspoken and said that his 10 and 15-year sentences were to run consecutively and not, as he originally stated, concurrently.
Oh.
Oops. I fucked up. Sorry.
Nope, you said that first.
Yeah, no,
they go at the same time.
He spent 7 years imprisoned in the Federal Correction Complex Terre Haute in Indiana, a really, really rough prison. He had originally been sentenced to Butner, but the DEA agent Lovato insisted that he serve time at Terre Haute, one of the 6 most secure prisons in the country. Terre Haute had the worst reputation of the 6 for gang rape and violence.
For weed?
For weed. The DEA just wanted to punish him at this point. Like, you've got him. Don't make his life a fucking misery. You know, what is wrong with you? Despite this, despite the terror that he was about to face, Marks remained on good terms with the many violent inmates that were housed there with him because he was British and famous as a non-rat. So they fucking loved him. And avoided conflict by being nice, charming, and eccentric because that's just him. So he goes to prison, super nice. He's just a normal guy that has got really interesting stories, and everyone loves him. Literally, he goes between racial gangs. Like, nobody gives him grief for that. During his time, he befriended many notorious criminals, amongst them members of 4 of the 5 reputed 5 families. As well as Black Panthers member Veronzo Bowers Jr. and James Big Jim Nolan of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. It just mates with all these people now because they're like, oh, Howard, you funny guy. We're not going to stab you. After his release from prison, he served 7 years, got out after 7 years. That's I wonder what he told them.
He just probably gave him weed.
Yeah, he's like, listen, the weed's buried over here, yeah, and there's a load of money over here. Can I go home now?
Yeah.
So after his release, Marks published an autobiography, Mr. Nice, in 1996, which was translated into several languages and became an international bestseller for years to come. When I went to university, everyone had this book. It was like everyone had this book, everyone had Train Spotting, everyone had Fight Club, and everyone had, I think, Anthony Kiedis's biography. I think most people had that. Mr. Nice is a great read. I would recommend it to people. It is hilarious and interesting, sad and poignant at times as well. But it's a bit like Goodfellas. Like, he genuinely seems to have enjoyed this insane period in his life, which was most of his life. So I would recommend it to anyone. The book was adapted into a really fun film starring Rhys Ifans as Howard Marks. So he was in, do you remember the Amazing Spider-Man films? The ones with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man?
I don't recall, no.
He was Kurt Connors. He was the reptile in that. He's been in a bunch of stuff as well, other films. Also in that film is Chloe Savini as Judy Marks. Okay. She does a really good British accent, actually. David Thewlis as Jim McCann. David Thewlis is Professor Lupin from Harry Potter, the guy who turns into a werewolf.
Oh, okay.
Who marries Tonks. Who, you remember the Tonks character? Kevin Smith joked about her. He was like, hey, Ron, you know Tonks, right? She definitely gives blowjobs because she's got a tongue piercing. It's just really funny. So David Thewlis is in that as Jim McCann. There's a really, really impressive Irish accent, David Thewlis, even though he's not. And randomly, Crispin Glover as Ernie Coombs. the insanity of Crispin Glover is in this
Okay.
film. It's called Mr. Nice. You can probably find it
I'm
somewhere.
gonna check that out for sure.
Yeah, seriously, it's a great film, and you get the sense that Howard Marks is just a really fun guy. To be honest, it's just a really great, poignant film. Also, the film is really good at pointing out that he had this thing because he used to tour while doing stage performances of his book, because he'd become notorious at this point and people wanted to see him live. He would at the start of the show go, "I have to ask, are there any police in the audience?" After sounds like, "That's good, because if you're here, you have to let me know now, because I'm not supposed to be followed. I've got an injunction against you." So you keep on asking this. He's doing the stories, and then like halfway through the show, "Are there any police in the audience tonight?" "No." "Okay, that's fine." And then it comes to the end of the show. He's like, "I'm going to ask one more time. Are there any police in the audience?" And no. He's like, "Thank fuck for that." And he gets out a blunt and starts smoking weed on the stage. Didn't matter where he was, he would do it every single night, and he never got arrested for it. So illegal in most of the countries he toured with that stage show, and he did it every fucking night, and the audience would usually give him a standing ovation afterwards. So really funny.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. There's more. Yeah, he also compiled an anthology called The Howard Marks Book of Dope Stories, 2001, and a follow-up from his autobiography, Senora Nice, Straight Life from Wales to South America, 2006. Senora Nice differs from his previous books as drugs are not the central story. While autobiographical, the book is more about Marx's own exploration of his claimed ancestor, the notorious pirate Sir Henry Morgan, who has since been immortalized for his namesake series of flavored rums, Captain Morgan.
Get out of here.
Howard Marks is related to Captain Morgan. And if you look at a picture of Howard Marks and you look at the fucking swashbuckling bastard on the Captain Morgan label, you're like, they look really similar. Like, it is striking how much he looks like Captain Morgan. And look at portraits of Sir Henry Morgan. It's basically the same person, I swear to God. It's really amazing.
Well, see, now, like, this story was awesome before.
Yeah.
But
even better. Now
like
he has a series of rums that look like him. Like, how crazy is that? It gets even weirder. Of course, Howard Marks also stood for election to the UK Parliament in 1997, the year that Labour came into power and kicked Margaret Thatcher's Tories to the fucking curb finally. On the second, so his campaign had one issue. What do you think it would be? The one thing he'd run on?
Weed.
Yeah. Legalization of cannabis.
Yeah.
He contested 4 seats at once, which is kind of amazing. Norwich South against future Home Secretary Charles Clarke, Norwich North, Neath, and Southampton Test, and picked up around 1% of the fucking vote. It's like, yeah, so I don't give a shit about the roads or about the local school issues or anything like that. I just want to make weed popular. You know, make sure get it into the hands of everyone around the country and legalize it. After a successful post-prison career advocating for the legalization of cannabis, making Welsh music with Welsh legends, super furry animals. Fucking love those guys. Occasionally acting, performing twice at Glastonbury, doing a one-man stage show reading of his books, and living a happy, healthy, and above all else, crime-free life. Howard Marks died of colorectal cancer on the 10th of April, 2016, at the age of 70, surrounded by his loved ones. Bunch of people talk about he was just the nicest human being, even though he smuggled several $1 billion worth of weed across the planet.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Howard Marks.
It's insane.
It's kind of crazy. I struggled a little bit, to be honest with you, with the person I was going to cover for this episode. I was happy to be able to cover my second Welsh person and have it be a more positive story, because this man, can you imagine what he could have done for the world if he'd just been like, oh, I don't know if I want to sell weed anymore. I'm going to go into politics or something else, you know, something involving his logistics mind. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is I don't even fault him, though, because I feel like they like it shouldn't have been illegal. They should have just let him do it. Like, he did a good job.
He did a really good job. And also, he prevented the kind of violence that is commonplace in the drug industry. Like, there is no like assassinations, no turf war, none of that. It's just him dealing hash to people that want to buy it on a massive scale.
Right.
And no one gets hurt. Well, apart from the people who end up in prison, but you know.
Right. Well, and it seems like he was just like chill, made the right connections, made the right deal, and like was the cool, chill, fun stoner dealer, but like top level. And yeah, that's I don't know. I can't give him a high score.
I didn't really want a high score. I was just like, this is the coolest story. And I've been aware of Howard Marks for a while. I'm Welsh. You know, we have very few like genuinely famous I guess like we have musicians and actors and like a bunch of people win Oscars and all of this shit and famous musicians and writers, but we don't have like self-made heroes in Wales. Very few of them, because he came from grinding poverty. I want to point out Bridgend. This is another place that was built on mining and like utter poverty and deprivation and like really shit circumstances. So the fact that he created an enormous empire out of his own wit and intelligence is kind of amazing. And he is loved in Wales. Very few people have anything bad to say about him because he never really did anything horrible. He just sold the most harmless drug there is, really. So yeah, and he swore off working like with hard drugs. He was like, no, I don't want to be involved with it. I just want to do cannabis, and that's it. And he's the stoner friend who's like, we should sell this, and like he does, but he does it on a massive scale. Like he's that guy.
Yeah, and he avoided the DEA for the most part for a long time. Knew they were bad news, and like I'm gonna give him his score, and he's gonna get a score instead of a 0 because I want to give him a 0, but he did end up in prison.
He did.
Because he got caught by the Mounties.
He got the fucking Mounties of all people,
and that is why he gets a score of 2.
2. Howard Marks gets a 2. I love that. Thanks for that. Honestly, if you get a chance to, because he's also like, you can listen to Mr. Nice. I'm sure it's on like Audible or one of those fucking services. But I would recommend watching the film. It's a really good, well-told story, some really strong performances. Kristen Glover is sane for once in his life in this film. He's not like a nightmare to deal with like he was on Back to the Future and all that. But yeah, I would highly recommend. It's a really interesting story. It's the kind of story, as Kimberly pointed out now, this dude is unbelievable. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't. But it's one of those stories that is so crazy and so insane. It has to be true, because how could you write something like this? You know?
It's like if Pineapple Express were a good movie. I mean, it was a good movie, but I mean, like, if it were really funny.
Yeah, if it were like, and also, and if Pineapple Express involved like the CIA, the Mafia, the Yakuza, the Triads, fucking MI6, the IRA, the Pakistani Army, the PLO, the Thai Police,
and we're true.
The Mounties, DEA. Like, I've never. If you'd put all of those people in a film about drug dealing and drug smuggling or something, people would be like, this is ridiculous. You would never work with all of these organizations. One guy did.
Yeah.
For like awesome, 15 years.
Yeah. I just realized something too. What's that? I gave him a 2, man.
2, man. That works perfectly. Yeah. So that's Howard Marks, the most successful Welsh crime lord of all time. Also, probably the nicest drug dealer in human history. I mean, I'm sure there's really nice guys out there that are super chill, but I doubt they've ever shipped over £1,000 a time in hash through international borders. So yeah,
probably not.
No. And also Marky Mark Wahlberg, who gets a score of 40 because he's really redeemed himself. And actually, both of these people, I mean, not that there was a huge amount to redeem in Howard Marks' case. Yes, smuggling and dealing drugs is bad, but he did it really, like, he wasn't exploitative, really. He's just giving people weed, really, at low prices, and good stuff too. But I feel like there is a redemption arc here, because he was like, okay, I can't do this now. It's putting my family in danger. A bunch of my friends have ended up in prison or on the DEA's like radar. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go legit. I'm going to write a book about it, and I'm going to tour with the book. I'm going to make music with the super furry animals, which is hilarious.
What a name.
I'm going to go to Glastonbury. Seriously, if you ask the thing over there to play God Show Me Magic by the Super Furry Animals, like, it's a really fun short song. It's like kind of poppy, but also like Brit pop and Welsh, and it's hard to explain. They were huge. Like, they're mentioned in the Gilmore Girls for some fucking reason. Anyway,
Okay.
Super Furry Animals, one of the most famous Welsh bands of all time, along with the Manic Street Preachers and Tom Jones and a bunch, Shirley Bassey, and famous people. But yeah, he just like, he decided that he wasn't going to do the drug thing anymore. He was going to get notorious for being a drug supplier and dealer and shipper and all of that, but he was just going to turn it into a persona, and it was really successful. He was really warmly received wherever he went. He had a really good life. He did really well by his family. He ended up being a millionaire even after he got out of prison through the book success and the subsequent appearances and stuff. So good for him. Both of these people have, seen the absolute lows of life, ended up in prison. Mark Wahlberg for 45 days, and Howard Marks for 5 days at one point. But, they've both rebuilt their lives really well. And actually, they were given the opportunity by people who believed in them to do that. And that's the important thing here, is that it's not just about rebuilding your life, because people will try and knock you down at various stages. They will try and trip you up because of your past. But if there are people out there that believe in you and that want to help you rebuild your life, and that you get the opportunity, when you see someone flourish after you give them an opportunity, it's something I've done in my job. I love hiring people who can make a living and like do something that they love and just go on to amazing things. There have been people who've been promoted above me that I've hired, and like all of these people who are like, they were working in like minimum wage jobs, and I managed to get them like actual jobs that they were qualified for within the media industry, and they go on to do great things. And that makes me really happy, being able to do that, because no one ever did that for me at various stages in my life. And actually, to be able to give that to someone is really great. So the redemption is real, but you have to be willing to give people those opportunities. That's the important thing, for sure. I had a lot of fun writing this one. I knew you were going to love it.
I had so much fun listening to this one.
It's such a cool story, and there's so much media out there about it. But as soon as I knew the story around Howard Marks, I was like, oh, this is just like, Derek's going to absolutely love this.
Dude, you can't hate something with all of that, the crime families, weed, and Captain Morgan. Come on, man. It's got pirates too?
It's crazy. Like, and also, I guarantee he was like, oh, I've got to go and research my descendant now. I've got to go and research one of my ancestors. Oh, what's that? He's involved with rum. Oh, I better get drinking then. Like, what an excuse to drink a bunch of Captain Morgan. Seriously, Kimberly, thank you for joining us so much. This has been another long and fun one. I have enjoyed doing these less intense ones a lot more than, like, I would love to eventually cover people like Margaret Thatcher and fucking Elon Musk and stuff, but like, it takes a lot out of you writing about all of the terrible things that they've done. Like, it's depressing, but actually learning about redemption arcs, learning about fun stories like Howard Marks' incredible life, way more interesting for me to research, and less harmful to me afterwards as well. Don't know if you agree.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, the more positive stories are definitely more fun to do. Plus, you feel less bad laughing about it if you know that they like don't suck so bad.
Yeah. And, I mean, okay, he was dead at 70, but Howard Marks had an incredible life. Mark Wahlberg, has had an incredible career in life as well. And, you know, long may it continue for him and other people who have been in their positions where you've got a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, whatever it might be. Run with it. We will always support you in that, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So thank you all so much for supporting us. Again, I want to give a big shout out to our supporters. Dilly Bob, I forgot to mention Dilly Bob. Oh my goodness, I apologize. Andrew Zavara, Kimberly Johnson, and Jesse Christ, our Patreon supporters. And if you want to go and support us over on Patreon, go to patreon.com/History's Greatest Idiots and sling us a little bit of money so we can do this full time. But also, you'll get a free gift. You'll get behind the scenes scripts. You'll get special reports. You'll also get some ad-free stuff that we'll be working on, and also a peek into our lives that no one else gets to see occasionally. So you might even see pets and cool stuff like that. So yeah. And also, if you give us a chance on Instagram, there's some interesting, cool stuff on there as well. So go to @History's Greatest Idiots and go and follow us on YouTube as well. History's Greatest Idiots there, where we've got 134 subscribers. I feel very happy about that.
It's kind of neat, man.
Yeah.
The Spotify numbers keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got we're approaching 1,200 subscribers on Spotify. And that's just on Spotify. So thank you all so much. We really do appreciate this. Honestly, making these episodes is like the highlight of my week. Pretty much every time we do it.
Yeah, we get to just sit here and talk and
hang out with you all.
Yeah,
it's great fun. Absolutely. And we will be back soon for our Patreon supporters. We will be back with an exclusive for you very, very soon. I've got a really cool story in mind for that, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. But we will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care now. Oh, Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, take care now. Bye.